Hey everyone, thank you for joining the 12th webinar, I believe it is now. I'm pretty sure it's the 12th in the AVO webinar series. My name is Alex, and I'm joined today by a very special guest, Joshua Entis from Mexico. What's up, Josh?
Hello. I'm from Los Angeles, but I'm in Mexico right now.
Sorry, yes, from LA, but enjoying the warm weather in Mexico. For those of you who, thanks for coming, man. Thanks for joining us. For those of you who are joining the webinar for the first time, my name is Alex. I'm the founder of Amazing Vegan Outreach. It's a nonprofit organization focused on providing professional learning experiences for animal rights activists, specifically in the communication space. So focusing on outreach, one-on-one conversations. And so I think it was natural to bring Josh on to the webinar, who is one of my favorite communicators. He has probably some of the most, I can't even think of anybody that has more positive vibes than Josh, honestly speaking. So, and I think that's a really, really important thing when we're trying to represent veganism well, we're trying to connect with people, build rapport with them. So Josh, I have a lot of questions for you that I've pre-planned, and I'm sure some new ones will come up while we chat. Sure. But is there anything that you want to share from your background? Maybe why don't you give us a little bit of a background as to, who you are. I have a lot of questions for you related to like your activism, that sort of thing, but just kind of who you are and what brought you to Mexico.
Absolutely. Well, since you have a lot of questions, I'll try to keep it as brief as possible. Wasn't always vegan, as most people. Grew up in Los Angeles, California, ate a very hardcore standard American diet. I hunted, I fished, so I know that side of it. And it wasn't really until 2000, I'll fast forward through the rest of my life, but it wasn't really until 2014 when I would say veganism found me. Through minimalism, was focusing on adding things into my life that added value and eliminating the things from my life that weren't adding value. That was people, geographical locations, material items, and then started to think about food. Eliminated gluten, sugar, alcohol, tried all this fun stuff. And then my best friend and I were like, do we need to be eating animals for our health? And we just Googled healthiest diet. I don't have a cool vegan story. We just Googled healthiest diet. Veganism came up, high five, we went vegan. But really after some close inspection, it was for 2 years I was plant-based. I was still supporting industries that are exploiting animals. I was still wearing their skin and their fur. I was still buying products tested on animals. I was still going to some of these entertainment facilities like horse racing and zoos. And it was because I thought veganism was a diet choice. Like a lot of people that I meet, that's what I was told. That's what the media was covering. That's what all these celebrities were doing. Veganism was a diet choice. I realized that wasn't the case after Earthlings slapped me in the face. Watched that powerful documentary and realized I needed to align my actions wholeheartedly with my values and beliefs of love, compassion, and justice for all.
How long ago was that? When did you watch Earthlings? Do you remember what year it was?
Yeah, so I went plant-based in 2014, Earthlings in 2016. And that's when my activism journey started. I said, hey, I got to now get active and help people create the change they wish to see in this world. So I started the AV chapter in Washington and Seattle, then started to do disruptions, bear witness with the SAVE movement, doing online activism, and just started to realize that there was a bigger world out there and we needed to all speak the truth and we needed to all get loud and do as much as we can. So I got addicted to activism. Fast forward, decided to quit my job in corporate sales and sell all my stuff in Seattle and wanted to travel the world doing as much activism as possible. 19 months ago, I set out on my first journey to Toronto. And it's 19 months now. It's been 24 countries, over 100 cities, tons of activism, tons of workshops, talks, and speeches. And then now I'm taking a little bit of recharge time. I just finished a 5-month North America tour, loving Mexico and being here for just another couple weeks until I set out to Animal Liberation Conference and then Europe. That was 3 minutes of me.
Awesome. No, that's great. And I'm curious, I want to go back to the transition between vegan and activist. Like, what was well, first of all, had you ever been active? Like, so we both come from a corporate sales background. I know for me, working in corporate sales, it's a very much self-centered kind of, the focus is on me growing my growing my career, my wealth, and that sort of thing. Do you ever been involved in any sort of activism for any other cause before animal rights?
Zero activism. I mean, I always spoke my mind. I was always outspoken. I was always someone who needed to be the center of attention and talk a lot. So I feel like I was always voicing my opinion. I just never had that opinion that was not self-focused or self-centered. You know, when I watched Earthlings, I realized that there's so much more than just myself. That there are these individuals that need someone to speak up for them, that this world needs us to speak up. And like, there's so much that's outside of my reach, that's outside of just what I can control, that I needed to take a stand for and now start being outspoken, but with intentionality, with something that was going to make this world a better place. I think watching Earthlings really, like, it opened my heart and it reached deep down within my heart and said, dude, you have all of this stuff that you have yet to use. You have all of this love and compassion that you need to use to fight for justice, for the animals, for this planet, for humanity. So Earthlings did all, whatever hour and 50 minutes of that documentary was like life-changing experience. I know that's so cliche, but it was so transformative for me as a human being, as an individual. Just I was finally ready to do something that I could put the ego aside.
And for me, I watched Earthlings, and it led me, like, when the credits were rolling in that film at the end, I was instantly vegan. Like, it was the easiest decision of my life. It's like, okay, well, no, I can't support that anymore. But I didn't become active for about 2.5 years after watching that and after going vegan. And I guess I just didn't know that, like, activism existed. It was kind of like, as blind as I was to veganism, I was just as blind to activism. So it took a friend of mine, running into a friend who had also gone vegan, who had participated in the Save movement and vigils. Like, I ran into him randomly, and he introduced me to that. And when I first went to a slaughterhouse and saw a cow and made eye contact with her, that's what I was like, I need to do more. I need to become active. And that, I mean, long story short, that led to, where I am now, but it led to a lot of a sense of fulfillment in my life. It also led to a massive decrease in the anger that I was feeling, because I was obviously very aware of what was going on. I just wasn't doing anything to solve it. And I think that may have caused some internal issues for me. But anyway, my question for you is, how did you find activism? What did you come across that made you actually know what to do or inspire you to do something?
Such a great question. And so much has happened in the last couple of years that it's a little foggy as to, like, I can't pinpoint the exact, like, moment that happened, but I do remember vividly that I finished watching Earthlings and I said, I need to do something. It was the first time where I was like, wow, this is what all these, like, heroes must be feeling. You know, the people that are, like, out there saving the world that we, like, see as kids, and the people who are, fighting for social justice and climate this and animals that. And I'm like, wow, all these amazing people are doing really incredible things. So I finally had that feeling, was like, it's time to do something. It's time to take a stand. So what I did is, it was perfect timing. I was, at the time, I think now it's called Eat, Drink, Vegan. It's one of the largest vegan food and drink festivals in the States. But at the time, it was the Portland Vegan Food and Beer Festival. Really long title. Basically just a bunch of vegan food vendors, other vendors, music, and beer. And so I went to that, and the whole drive there from Seattle to Portland, so 3 hours, I was just in the back seat. And I remember this, like, sticking my head through, like, the middle of the two seats. I was, like, talking to my friend and his wife, and I was like, I got to do something. I just watched this documentary. Like, I can't be silent anymore. Being vegan for myself is great, but it's so selfish. Like, there's so much more I could be doing for other individuals. So what I did was, as you know, in sales, like, I think this is where it helped me, was I was a commission-based salesman. The more I sold, the more money I made, but I didn't necessarily have all of the customers. I had to go find them. So I had to go prospect and get leads. And so I realized that I needed to do something. I needed to go to whatever sort of thing that I had out there to try to find activism. So I took to social media. I just started watching YouTube videos. I started Googling certain keywords, like, do something for animals, activism. I knew what activism was. I just didn't know how accessible it was. And the first thing I found was in the Vegans of Seattle Facebook group was a direct action everywhere protest in a Whole Foods. So actually, no, just kidding. I was volunteering, now it hit me, I was volunteering at a vegan grocery store in Seattle. And the manager there was like, hey, we're doing some activism at Pride Festival. We're just going to be leafleting. It's so easy. Come on out, come pass out some flyers. And I was so nervous. I was like, oh my gosh, I'm going to be passing out these flyers. Like, people are going to judge me and they're not going to want to take these flyers. And like, you know, anytime I see a leafleter, I just walk by. I'm like, okay, no, thank you.
Yeah.
It was such a beautiful experience. I felt like I was doing something. However little it was, people were taking these leaflets. People were having these conversations. I felt like I was doing something. So then I got, okay, right to Facebook. What activism is there? Then the DXC thing came up. Went to a protest in a Whole Foods where we sang the Liberation song and then walked out with the signs and chanting. And I was like, wow, this feels amazing. I was super nervous again. I had a lot of fear and I was, you know, pushing my comfort levels. And then I was like, I need more. Then entered the SAVE movement. And kind of like yourself, this is when it really clicked to like, this is going to be my life. You know, I went to a live auction and we did like a half bearing witness inside as sort of guests there to like watch what happened in the live auction, and then a protest on the outside. And I connected with a calf there that was going to be sold to the veal industry. And at that moment I was like, I need more. Like, I'm not stopping. Went to Facebook, posted in the groups. I just started to take action. I wasn't going to sit here and be like, oh, come on, activism, come to me. Like, no, I got to go out there and do something. So then I found that I saw Anonymous for the Voiceless. I think I watched like the old Joey Carbstrong video back when he was doing like Joey versus the Public or something like that. And I saw these like white masks and computer screens in Adelaide, Australia. And I was like, all right, what is this? And there was not one in Seattle. I was like, here's your chance to finally like take a leadership role and use your skills as a communicator, and now put it to the test with going out to the streets. So I think went to social media to find communities of people who were getting active. Because even 2.5 years ago, activism wasn't mainstream. It's really been in the last 2 years that it's just SAVE movement, DXC, AV, you know, chalking. There's so much stuff that's now accessible to everyone.
I agree with you. It's exploded. Like I started my activism in 2014, and just the difference between the sheer amount of people doing anything from then till now is just insane. Like it's becoming, I don't know, more mainstream, more acceptable to be an activist. Whereas I don't know. I remember even when I started activism, I felt weird. I felt like probably the same way that people feel when they go vegan. It's like, it's super uncomfortable. It's scary. And especially like, I remember same with you, like my first slaughterhouse visit, I was so nervous. Like now it's like so normal, but back then I was like so scared. Like, what am I going to see? How are these people going to react? I was afraid of like violence towards me. Same thing with disruptions. I was worried that people were going to like, freak out and want to beat us up. And it's happened a couple of times, but not very often. So if anyone's thinking about doing that stuff, they're relatively safe. And it really helps, I think, also to have the right attitude going into those things. So before we get into like attitude and communication, I want to ask you one more question, because
can I mention one thing about the last thing that you just said?
Yeah, of course.
I think it's one thing that we can all learn from this, and I think it's something that I can say every single activist has learned, is it's going to be uncomfortable in the beginning. It's going to be scary. You're going to have fear. You're going to think about what other people are going to think about you. It's natural. But we have to push past some level of uncomfort to achieve the change we want to see in this world. And on the other side of this uncomfort is confidence, is speaking with conviction, is breaking past those barriers of that fear and maybe that anxiety. Because when you finally cross over that little line to where you're doing something for someone else, for the animals, trying to make this world a better place for us all, like that feeling, that's going to help sort of propel you into a whole new world of activism. So push past the fear and the uncomfort, because greatness lies on the other side. It's a beautiful thing.
Yeah,
that was just my little 2 cents I want.
No, I love it. And it's really just that little hump that you have to get over. I liken it to public speaking. You know, I've done a ton of public speaking. I'm sure you have as well. And every time that I go up on stage or I'm about to talk to a crowd, I have that those butterflies, that nervousness. And the minute that I start speaking, it goes away. You know, like as soon as you start. So it's like you have to get over that little hump. And once you get past that hump, like, you know, I remember I was so nervous going to that slaughterhouse for the first time. And as soon as I got there, like within 5 minutes of being there, it all went away. It's just funny how we're like that. And we you know, it's a lot of the fear of the unknown, I think. But once you're actually in it, it's not that scary, really. Here's my question for you about activism. And obviously, all of us were aware of different injustices in the world, right? At the time of us going vegan and us becoming animal rights activists. So it's a question that I've asked myself, and I definitely have my answer, but I'm curious what inspired you to become active for non-human animals, but not for any other cause or any other injustice that's happening in this world right now? Like, what was it that motivated you to do so much, to quit your job, to sell your possessions, to do all these things for speciesism, for animal rights?
I think that's a really amazing question. I've never been asked that like in such a direct way. I think people are, you know, we get the bystanders on the street. Why don't you fight for babies? Or why don't you fight for the planet? You know, like all those things. I don't know. Someone was yelling that at one of the last outreach events I was at. So I think, and I've done a little bit of thought on this. One, I think we'll never truly understand. I know that's weird to lead with, but I think there's just factors outside of our understanding that have put us into this, where we're at today. Two, I think it's time, place, location, just where you happen to be, who happened to be around you, and what sort of shift in consciousness happened at that moment. For me, it was, and who you are as an individual. I grew up saying I was an animal lover. Like, I loved cats my whole life, dogs my whole life, loved animals. But I hunted, I fished, I supported industries that exploited animals a lot. Most of my dollars went to supporting these industries. So I think what happened was when I watched Earthlings and everything sort of connected and all, like, my mind, body, and soul aligned, it was like that's when all the sort of hypocrisy of my past kind of got put right out in front of me, and I was able to see it all. And I took an objective view at this and said, I need to make amends. Like, I need to, for everything that I've done for the 24 years of my life, or at the time it was 26, because plant-based, for those 2 years, I really didn't have a conscious thought about the animals. It was more selfish about the health. And so I think it was like, dude, you have so many individuals you need to fight for all the years of you contributing to this. Plus, I just got into that. That was the first sort of social justice movement that I put my feet in the water at. You know, I started in the shallow end. I was like, all right, I didn't put my feet in the waters of climate justice. I didn't put my feet in the waters for human rights issues. Not that I'm not passionate about that. I just went into the pool of animal rights activism right away, to the animal rights movement. And so that's just what I knew. And I think that's just the best way to answer that for myself, is that's what I started with. That's what I knew. Not saying that if I went a completely other direction to start fighting for this earth, that I couldn't do a stellar job at that with the same amount of years of research and reading and practice and activism. So I think we all need to pick what comes natural to us, what we're most passionate about, because there's always going to be this person right over there that's doing the same thing we're doing, but for this earth, but for humans, but for water usage around the world, you know, but for building schools in different countries. Like, yeah, I want to do a little bit about that, because that's a really good question. Hope that answered it a little.
Yeah, you actually gave me another reason besides what I have. So I'll share with you what my thoughts are on this. But you just gave me another reason that I didn't recognize that was actually a huge motivator for me, and it just hit me with what you said. And that is that I had contributed to this so much for my entire life. And you said I felt like I had to make amends, and I definitely felt that. I definitely felt like, holy crap. I mean, I know it was unknown. Like, I wasn't purposely hurting other living beings, but I just wasn't conscious of it. So when I became conscious, I'm like, wow, I need to make up for what I've done, even though it wasn't on purpose. Oh, yeah. And that was definitely, wow, I hadn't thought about that until you said that. And then for me, the other things that I think motivated me and have kept me doing this work is that, I don't know, and I genuinely don't, and I'm open to hearing about this, but I don't know what I can do as an individual with my individual behavior change to help end the war in Syria. Like some people say, oh, why don't you fight for these other causes? And I haven't found a cause that I can personally have as much impact on as speciesism and as an animal rights activist. And that goes for my ability also to inspire others. Like the actions that, such a simple act, and we know it's simple, right? Just choosing the oat milk over the dairy milk, right? We know how simple that is, but when we can inspire other people to make that simple choice, the impact of that simple choice is huge. Where I don't know what other social justice issue there is where people can make such a small change with such a large impact. That's what the bang for your buck type of idea. That's what keeps me motivated to do this. And I see so much change happening, and that might even segue us into the topic, like the main topic of our webinar, which is will the world go vegan? And I think what I mean by that, and I hope that you interpret it this way as well. Well, first of all, let me ask you this question, just kind of a yes or no. Do you think that the world will actually, first of all, before I even ask that, we have to define what that means. What does it mean with the world going vegan? So the way that I meant it, when I talk about the world going vegan, I basically mean, I don't think that we will ever be able to completely eliminate all animal exploitation, all animal use around the world. That's not exactly what I mean. When I say, will the world go vegan, I mean that in general, humanity's perspective on non-human animals will reach a point where it's very similar to the way that we view other humans. So whereas it was, acceptable for humans to discriminate against other humans, now, although it happens, it's generally not accepted, or at least people kind of know it's wrong and we shouldn't be doing that. So that's kind of what I mean by will we adopt a vegan perspective globally where it's not okay to enslave animals, in general, and exploit them and use them and kill them. So that's my first question to you is
that definition changes my whole outlook on it.
Okay, well, so let's say based on that definition, do you think that the world will ever at any point in humanity's future go vegan by that definition? Just yes or no?
Yes.
Okay. So then the next question is, by that definition, do you think that it will go vegan within our lifetime?
No.
Okay, cool. So this is neat, and I'm glad that we have a different perspective on this, and this could lead to an interesting conversation. So I'd love to hear your point of view. Then, what is it that you think will hold us back, or will not allow us to get to that point where, in general, we view non-human animals as deserving similar rights to human animals?
Yeah, and let me preface this. Like, I hope that no doesn't shoot off a super negative and like pessimistic vibe on my outlook, like, because I do have something to show you how that thought sort of actually helps me fight harder, and I think is actually more sustainable for us to have this view. But based off that definition, like, I'll first say I wake up every single morning with a vegan world as my end goal. Like, I want that to happen now. Like, maybe last 5 minutes I wanted it to have happened, and that's sort of like my end goal. But the thing that I think is our limiter is, one, not knowing enough about the human mind, and two, years and years of conditioning. And I'll start with the not knowing enough about the human mind. Is, as you know, in sales, like, we do everything in life based off whether we are going to get pain or avoid pleasure. And that's the way we dictate all of our behaviors and our decisions. And I think that it's because we've been conditioned, because we've been so brainwashed, like literally people driving up to vigils and throwing bacon on the ground. Like, there's a certain demographic of people that I think that are going to be, I call it the long game and the short game. You have the people that you meet at these outreach events, the people that send you messages on social media, the people that you meet at these protests and marches that are there, that are open, that are willing, that are ready to make this change and to have this shift of consciousness, or just need a little bit of help. And I think that's the majority. I think the minority is a group of these people that are so apathetic to what's going on. So the reason why I don't think it's going to happen in our lifetimes, I'm turning 30 this year. Let's say I'm going to live to 110. That's going to be I'm going to be around to 110. So, that's not a lot of time. And so when I look at the past social justice movements of our time, like it took 400 years or more to abolish slavery. But according to your definition, yes, there are still some people slavery still exists.
Yeah, totally.
Oppression towards human beings still exists. So if we look at and I don't want to base it just off one social justice movement, but if we look at slavery as just 400 years, like really this social justice movement of veganism, of the animal rights message, what did it come about in the 60s or the 50s or something like that? But really we've been going hard since like the 90s, maybe 80s, 90s. ALF came in the game, and then then you had Gary Yourofsky, and then it's just like really in the last 15 years, things have been going super full on. So I just think if we look at just time, 70 years to achieve that might not be enough. My other thought is, if we have, and I don't want to say that this is an unrealistic goal or not, and I would love to hear your idea on this, because according to your definition, we might be able to, and I'm fighting for that daily. But what happened to me is, and what I've got some experience from a lot of people is, and I don't want to relate this to sales, but I feel like I have to compare this, is the idea of an unrealistic goal and what that does to a human being. So let's say I'm selling $100,000 of merchandise a month, and now I'm talking with someone. I'm like, you know what? Next month I'm going to write $4 million in business, or I'm going to write $6 million. Really big goal. You could do it. Awesome. Get your butt into gear. You could do it, but it's unrealistic. So what happens if you only sell 225,000? Or what happens leading up to that day of the end of the month and you're not even close? It brings you down. It did for me when sales.
Josh, you're reminding me of some of my team members that I used to manage, where they give me these goals, and I'm like, really? Like, you did 1/10 of that last month. You're gonna 10 times? Yeah, I hear what you're saying, and
so that's why I look at this. If we have this goal of animal liberation, or what you had defined, and if in 30 years we're not close, or we're in the same spot, like, how is that going to make us feel as activists in 20 years? But like I said, I think what's going to change my mind is if we mobilize, if we get more activists and we constantly put the same amount of effort we're putting to fighting for the animals as to fighting for vegans to go active, then absolutely. Like someone said here, if we get this critical mass going, 100% I think it could happen in our lifetime. But we might have to reassess our tactics and change a few things, because we have to work together. And the other thing, before I leave it to you, is, and this is just sort of a limiter for me, is you look at America and you look at the Farm Bill. And how am I supposed to see that we will change our ways if the meat and dairy industry are not playing by supply and demand? And in 2018, if we had the lowest demand of meat and dairy ever in recorded American history, yet the highest supply, the highest amount of cows killed, the highest amount of dairy cows exploited. It's because the Farm Bill. It's because we're subsidizing these farmers and we're giving them bailouts. So I think, one, and there's some groups out there, the Vegan Justice League, the lobbying group that's out there. If we can get the Farm Bill taken off in America, people love to follow suit with what America does.
Oh, yeah.
They love to follow suit. So if we can get that done and start, I know DXE is working on laws, and like, I think it's going to have to start from a legal aspect. We're going to have to change some laws.
Yeah.
So that
you're right.
That's my only hesitancy. Yeah, and I'm being honest. Like, that's my only hesitancy with saying in the next 70 years.
Yeah. No, I first of all, you're right. I mean, if you can change the Farm Bill, if you can, and Canada also subsidizes their, I think every country has to subsidize those industries heavily. If those subsidies were removed, that's it. Like, they're done. They can't afford to operate. So, when it comes to subsidies, I feel like they are a short-term solution. But if demand continues dropping, at some point, there's just not enough subsidies. Like, they just can't, there is a limit to how much money can go to them.
Sure.
So I think it's a short-term solution for them. But okay, so here's my perspective, and one, of course, it's good to look at historical and look at past movements, but there's one thing that past movements did not have. Specifically the one thing that I can think of, and we're on it right now, it's technology. Like, I think that the reason why this movement is booming and growing so quickly, and like, look how many people you talk to on the streets. I know you do tons and tons of cubes all over the world. Would you agree with me that the majority of people, regardless of, like, I'm just talking about on average around the world from cubes you've gone to, that the majority have seen something to do with how animals are raised or killed in slaughterhouses? Would you say like over 50%?
I would say definitely over 50. I was going to say probably 50 to 70%, maybe 50 to 60% for sure.
Yeah. And I think that the numbers grow in more developed nations, and in less developed, it's lower. But, the majority of people, regardless of where you are around the world, like I've traveled South America, Central America, Europe, North America primarily, they know what's going on. And the only reason why is because of technology, because we all have these in our hands and we can live stream stuff out of, like, it's insane. It's amazing what we can do, right? So I think that technology helps. The fact that we can be on a webinar right now, and people can hear this message across the world. Like, I can't even imagine how, even like Martin Luther King, not long ago, man, the guy had to travel and give talks, and write letters. And that's the only way that people, like, that the message was spread. So the amount of time that it takes is just, it's eliminated right now as far as getting our message across, right? That's one. And here's my perspective on why. So first of all, I agree with you. You don't want to set unrealistic goals. And I don't think I have this as much of I don't think I've set it as a goal for myself as like, we have to achieve animal liberation in our lifetime. I just think it's almost an inevitability. And I'll tell you why. And I don't actually think it's going to be primarily because of us and our work, like activists. I think that if what is being predicted actually happens, where there's going to be massive water shortages in the world, because farming animals and animal products are so water intensive, the cost of production for those products is going to shoot through the roof, which is going to either put more pressure on those subsidies. So it's not like the costs are going to stay stagnant. They're going to keep increasing, I think. And I think there's going to be like all of a sudden water is going to just take off as far as price. It's going to be really, really expensive to get water, especially like Mexico, actually. I know there are cities in Mexico that are really struggling with water consumption, and aquifers that are just completely being eliminated. So imagine when people can't drink water to survive, when they have to choose between buying a steak or buying even ground beef or whatever it is, and drinking water, obviously it's gonna shift the demand for meat, I think. But what I really think is going to happen, and I think it's already happening now, with organizations like Tyson in the U.S. I believe Tyson's the largest meat producer in the U.S. or one of, sorry?
If not the world.
If not the world, okay, so massive. And the CEO of Tyson came out and said that they're going to be investing in plant-based technology, in plant-based meats. They're not doing that for ethical reasons. It's not that they all of a sudden grew a conscience. They're a corporation. They care about profits. And what I think they realize is that with these increasing costs of production and subsidies only lasting long enough, if they can be at the forefront of the move from animal meat to plant-based meats, I would bet a lot of money that we're going to see, and I think it's a good investment if anybody's looking to invest money. I think we're going to see meat companies like Tyson advertising plant-based meats. I think we're going to see ads that we're not going to have to pay for, and that is going to, like, those economic powers are going to, like, lead. And the sad thing is that we live in a money-driven world, right? So I think it's going to kind of lead the way. It's going to kind of pave the path. And beside it, here we are kind of fighting on the ethical side. And it's going to be so much easier for, like, the people who aren't the innovators, the early majority, the early adopters or whatever. It's going to make it easier for them to be like, oh, this is so normal now. Yeah, you know what? Yeah, you're right. Hurting animals is wrong because it's so normal now. You're going to go to barbecues, you're going to go to restaurants, and they're going to have plant-based meats everywhere. And it's going to make it easier for people to get on board, I think. So that's kind of my idea. I see them happening kind of in tandem, but the economic factors are really going to push forward, I think, in the next 10, 20 years. What do you think?
and I agree. And that's why, like, no, I agree completely. And my vision, my hard no on a vegan world in my lifetime is when people say, like, is the world going to be vegan, you know, in a traditional sense? Like, but I agree with you with the beginning definition that you had said, that I do think, sorry, is my internet going out?
It's a little choppy, but it's like we can still
Technical
kind
difficulties.
of. Yeah, you're frozen right now, but I can hear you. And maybe I can't hear you anymore.
Can you hear me?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. You're kind of back now. And by the way, I hear some beeping. Is there like a truck reversing or something near you?
Let me shut the door.
Okay.
I think it's in the front anyway. So.
Okay.
My apartment, like Mexico City is structured to where like all apartments are literally on the street. Like you walk out of your door and there's a street. Shh, quiet. So I'll just try to speak louder than that. Hopefully that's not too much of a nuisance. I can try going in the other room and shutting the door if it gets too loud.
It's minor. I mean, the beeping's minor. It's not a big deal. And you're back on now. Like the feed is good. So.
Okay. So what I was saying is I 100% agree with you. That's not going to happen. I'm going to flip this to a positive instead of saying not. It's only going to happen, like I said, when we mobilize. We need to now, because I think even as vegan activists, every single year, every single month, we should be reassessing our tactics and our strategies and our effectiveness and really seeing what's working and what isn't working. I put a lot of emphasis with my time and my energy trying to get people to be active. You know, ethics is not going to be the main contributor to people going vegan, like you said. People are selfish by nature, and they're going to go vegan because of their health. And they're going to go vegan because Mother Earth is like spitting at us and being like, yes, you need to make a change. So I think health and environment are going to be what brings people to the idea of veganism, but then it's going to be up to us to really clearly define what veganism is. So when we get more activists, when we mobilize, when we all start using our passions and our skills to do our own activism, and then when all these companies start changing, when all of these companies start investing more in plant-based meat alternatives, and we start reducing, I'm not saying I'm okay with reducing, but naturally the reduction of animal suffering will happen in that time, so that hopefully the norm is going to be to not hurt animals, to not use animals. So I do think we will reach 50% in our lifetime. And then maybe when we hit that, maybe critical mass is like, boom, okay, then it's like, oh, you're out. There's always going to be the black market carnists. Always.
Yeah.
Black market carnists, you know, that are just like, I need to trademark that term. I just came up with that right now.
Black market carnists.
You know what I'm saying? There's always going to be those people. Like my 85-year-old grandfather, I always have hope for people, but probably will not be a vegan for the rest of his however many years he has left on this planet. He's made a lot of changes, which I'm very happy that he supports me with what I'm doing, but like there's always going to be people. So I don't want to say when we like siphon out that generation, but as some of these older generations, the more conditioned generations kind of go out, it's going to be up to us and then the newer generations that are going to now lay the foundation. So I think in time, we're just playing with time here. Whether it's 60 years or whether it's 150 years, it's going to happen soon.
Yeah.
That's my final answer.
Yeah. I mean, hey man, I'll take it. If we see it at 50, if we see a 50% vegan world, I mean, that'd be insane. That'd be insane in our life. And I think it's possible. I really do think it's possible. And and I agree with you 100%. Like either way, whether we see it happening or we don't, there are just as much incentives to continue fighting for it, right? So it's kind of irrelevant to the idea of should we be activists or not? Yeah, we should. We can make it happen faster either way. And I just want to kind of say one quick comment before I go on to a few other questions that I have for you on communication. You said that people are kind of inherently selfish, and I agree with that. Like, you know, we have to take care of ourselves. We are the most important being on the planet for ourselves, you know, and in general, I don't think there's anything wrong with that. But I also don't believe that, you know, in general, people are kind of okay with what's happening. Like I think you have to be pretty evil to look at what's happening to animals and be like, yeah, that's awesome, that's cool, I'm totally fine with that. And most people aren't, right? Like most people look at the footage, like the great majority look at the footage, and they're very disturbed by it. They're saddened by it. So that motivates me as well. Kind of the idea that humanity isn't inherently evil. I think that we're inherently weak as a species. I think that our role as activists and as outreachers should be to inspire and motivate and empower people to kind of live in alignment with their values. So it's also kind of the reason why I really focus on a coaching framework, because it's like aligning actions with values that they already have. So I want to kind of segue here into communication then. And given that, how important it is for us to be effective communicators, what are maybe some pieces of advice that you would give to people? Because I saw a comment here. I'm just going to quickly scroll back up. Ricky wrote a really nice comment. These two guys inspire me to keep going out there and doing outreach. Thanks to both of you for doing what you do for the animals. Much love. And so what is it that what advice would you give Ricky or other people who either are doing outreach now or thinking about doing it, as far as attitude goes? Like, attitude for me is a big thing. And you have such a great attitude, I think, when it comes to activism and outreach. So what advice would you give people to be able to adopt a positive attitude in such a sad reality when it comes to non-human animals?
Ooh, I give a whole workshop on this one. I think it's so important, because outreach isn't just going out there and having a conversation with someone about veganism. And as you know, and as most people know, there's so much more to outreach, from how you prep yourself mentally, physically, spiritually, how you prep and help lead the person that you're speaking with. And I think if I were to sum it up, I don't know how many steps I'm going to do it in, but I'm just going to say a few things on some advice I would say for anyone who's in active or doing outreach right now or getting into outreach. One, educate yourself. We all know what it's like to try to defend our case when we're not knowledgeable about a topic. It's so much harder to talk about something when we don't feel informed about the topic. So educate yourself. There's endless amount of resources out there, but that's a no-brainer. Something that not a lot of people talk about that I think is so important, and you mentioned it, positivity. I focus a lot on helping people forge a positive mental attitude, PMA, because I think in an inherently, I don't want to say an inherently negative world, because it all comes down to perception, but in this movement, what we see on a day-to-day basis, whether it's primary boots on the ground in front of these killing factories or scrolling on social media, we see a lot of pain, suffering, trauma, misery, death, and that takes a huge toll on our mental well-being. Now, I used to approach all of my outreach conversations with a very negative mindset. My headspace was filled with a lot of negativity. I would look at someone watching that computer screen or that TV and be like, oh, this person's going to give me but bacon though, and Jesus ate fish, or they're going to like throw something at me and spit in my face and say that vegans are extreme and militant and hippies. I filled my mind with all of this negativity. So what do you think happened? When I approached those outreach conversations, since I had negative thoughts, more negativity came out in words. And I was on edge more, and there was more frustration being built. And now it was this defense mechanism on both ends. Now we were debating. Now we were arguing. So what I did, a simple trick, because when I started focusing on forging the positive mental attitude for myself, is life just is what it is. Everything that happens in life is external. You and I could go see the same movie, and you walk out of that movie super positive and like life is amazing, and you want to go take on the world. And I could walk out of that movie with a really negative mindset, and something happened to that movie that really made me focus on something negative. Our thoughts create our reality. So if you change your thoughts, you can change your reality. So what I did is I started to change my thought process before going into my outreach conversation. Boom, Joshua, you got this. You're going to crush it. You're confident. You're going to speak with conviction. This person's going to be so open because you're asking the right questions and because you're focusing on having a conversation. This person's going to give you a hug at the end and ask how they can go vegan. And then what do you think started to happen? I started to speak with a smile. I started to have more positive interactions. The conversation started to get even better and better in regards of no more arguing, no more debates. I would say I almost never have a debate anymore. I don't allow it to get there because I control what goes on here, which means I control what comes out of my mouth. So that's first step, is prime your headspace. You be in control. Don't let what anyone else thinks or says control what goes on up here. If you're in the middle of a conversation, someone says something to you that triggers you and you don't like, stop, take a breather, bring it in, bring it out. It's not your fault. Like, you're doing something for the animals. This person just has conditioning. The second thing I would recommend, and it was one of the most simplest things that is not talked about enough. A lot of people go into these outreach conversations thinking that they're speaking to someone. Communication's two-way, as you know. We don't speak to people. We speak with people. So when I changed my thought process, I would lead every outreach conversation being like, all right, my agenda, animals. I need to go fire off veganism and get them to go vegan right now. And I'm not saying that that's not my agenda always. I just don't lead with that agenda. I go in focusing on building a relationship. And I know that might sound weird to some people, but I think outreach is 100% relationship building, and that's it. Go in there, always have your agenda in the back of your mind, but learn about the human being you're speaking with. Ask them really good questions. Be their friend. Respect, trust, and rapport. Those three things, if you center your whole conversation about building those things up, there's no way you can have a bad conversation. And I'm not saying that every conversation is going to end with someone going vegan, but they're going to end where people are at least listening to you and you're having that conversation. So prime your headspace, focus on the positivity instead of the negativity. Always be open to what's going to happen. Focus on speaking with an individual, and make sure you have really good, open-ended, thought-provoking questions that are premeditated. Have questions that, in my workshop, I give a list of these questions and what sort of answers you're going to get, because a lot of the times people lack the confidence or feel really disempowered in an outreach convo when they don't know what to say. Every conversation is going to be different because you're a human being with different experiences. So the more prepared you are, the more planned you are. Like, I ask the same questions in almost all of my outreach conversations. Every week I'm adding some new questions to see if I'm still waiting to find the one magical question that gets someone to go vegan on the spot. Don't worry, I'll let you all know when I find that. But if we continue to challenge ourselves and get these questions, then we're just going to be more prepared. Because the more confident you are, the more knowledge you have on the topic, the more conviction you're going to speak with. And when you focus on building that relationship with the other human being, then they're not going to leave the conversation with a lecture mentality. Like, if you speak to someone, that's lecture. Lecture is not the most effective thing we can do when doing vegan outreach. It's about communication. I ask you a question, you answer. I give you space to ask me a question, I answer. So I can go on for the next 6 hours on this, but I'm just going to stop there at a few really practical things that I think we can do now is just prep your headspace, focus on the positive, and make the conversation about building a relationship, and have some premeditated questions that you have. I mean, I'm sure you have a bunch. Message me. I always send them to people after my workshops if people want them. Like, we all need to be using all of our resources, because you have a different perspective than me, than every other person here in this talk. So, and I'm sure you can add on to a lot of that.
I mean, I can't add a ton. I can echo some of the things that you've said, and I love hearing you say this stuff, because first of all, I think your sales background comes through in that. You know, I think that one of the things that I learned working in sales for 20 years was the positive mental attitude, despite a lot of rejection. You're going to get lots of no's in sales. You actually get, in sales, and you actually get a lot more yeses in activism and outreach. So it's a lot easier than sales, but for someone who's not used to rejection at all, you have to, I always say, like, well, it's not my expression, but hope for the best, expect the worst. That's what I go into every outreach conversation with, right? That attitude where I know that this person could potentially want to go vegan on the spot. And I'm gonna treat the conversation as such, with that positive attitude. Yet I've been in conversations that have been people just trolling us and trying to make fun of us, that sort of thing. And it also doesn't bother me, because I expect that to happen as well. So, and you said one thing, which I also, man, it's like core to my message, and to the message that AVO is trying to bring to the activist world. It's people often in workshops that I do, I always get goals for what they want to achieve. And not one of the goals, probably one of the most common goals is that people want to know what to say. They don't want to be in a situation where they're stuck and they don't know how to respond, right? And I never write that down as a goal. I actually change that goal right from the start. And instead of writing down knowing what to say, I say knowing what to ask. Because if you have that idea that you just brought up, that relationship building idea, that idea of becoming curious about wanting to learn about this person and get to know them in that conversation, it gets so much easier. There's so much less pressure on you having to know everything. And the last thing that I'll echo from you is the product knowledge. So again, from a sales standpoint, you want to know as much as you can. You can't learn enough about your product, your industry, your service, whatever that is with veganism. Learn as much as you can. Watch as many documentaries, read as many books, go to as many lectures, whatever you can do, do it. And then when you're in that conversation, it's almost like forget it, put it out of your mind and focus on this individual. Focus on creating that rapport with them. And there are times when you do that, when you're focused on creating rapport, that the right opportunity comes for you to share the right piece of information, the right knowledge, as opposed to just feature dumping and dumping all the vegan facts and statistics and things that you can on them. It makes that conversation so much more enjoyable and valuable for that other person, I think.
100%. I agree. And I just want to add on the relationship thing too, because this is one of my favorite topics to discuss, because I think there are so many simple tactics that we could be using when doing vegan outreach that will amplify our reach that just not everyone is doing. I would say the majority of people, and I'm not calling anyone out, I was guilty of it for the first 30 or 40 outreach demos that I went to, and we have every right to go full lecture mode. Why? We wake up to this nightmare. We have passion and drive and this dedication, and we want everyone to hear our message. But we have to take an objective view on it and think, what's the most effective thing that we can do? And if people watch any of my outreach conversations on YouTube, I don't even think we get into much objection handling in them, because I don't let it get there. Because if you keep it friendly, and you can, of course I handle objections in there, they do come out, but I don't let them be an objection. I give them the space to give me what challenges they have, because then it's not a defensive objection. But if we focus on building that relationship, one, you will feel better as an outreacher after that conversation's done, which means you will have more energy to go to your next conversation. When I was exhausting all of my energy in my lecture mode days of doing outreach, I'd be done with a conversation. I'd be like, I'm out. I'm done. Like, I'm exhausted. That just burnt me out. So now not only are you being more sustainable with your energy, but you're really painting a really nice picture on who vegan activists are for the person that you're speaking with. And if you don't make it about the other person, I use this example. It's great when I'm in person in my workshop, but like if I was trying to sell you my shoes, I have brown shoes, by the way. And I went into that conversation just being like, hey, hope you're having a great day. Have you seen these shoes before? Like, do you want to buy my shoes? Like, they're this feature, they got red laces, this, and this, want to buy my shoes. You might just be that cool of a person to where someone wants to buy your shoes. But the mistake is I took no time to learn about that person. Maybe they already have shoes. Maybe they're vegan. And that's happened to me before because I didn't ask the right questions and I was speaking with a vegan 20 minutes into the conversation. Maybe they had a traumatic experience with brown shoes in their life before. You know, maybe they had a run-in with veganism that was traumatic for them for whatever reason, and they just didn't have the support system to talk it through. So if you lead in with your agenda and making it all about you, which you mask that behind all about the animals, you're neglecting the person that's speaking with you, the human being. I always say, I want to lay a red carpet out for anyone who stops on the side of the street to talk with me about veganism. I want to give them a chair and feed them grapes. I know this is wild. Give them a nice ice cold kombucha. I want to value and respect their time for being there because they just stopped to talk with me about veganism. And now I have the space, we have the space to really promote a positive message for the animals. So I think we need to be grateful for the fact that these people are stopping. That comes prepping our headspace. That's going to get us to a place where it's so much easier to make it about speaking with the person and not to the person. Now, don't get me wrong. There will be times when we have to speak to the person. When it is time to give the facts, always give the facts when it's time to give the facts. We have to. We have to speak up for the animals. But you will see your outreach go to the next level the second you start learning about the human being that's standing in front of you. Learn about them. What challenges do they have? Are they vegan? Do they have any friends that are vegan? What's your home life like? You know, do you think if veganism was a little bit more convenient, it'd be easier for you? Like, ask some of these open-ended, closed-ended questions. Learn about the person so that they give you all of this juicy information. Because you'll see, as you know, and I'm sure as many people know, at some point in that conversation, they're going to say something that you then latch onto, and now that's your main focus on helping them align their actions with their values, like what you were saying.
So Josh, for anyone who's wondering, like, you know, we're talking theory here, and I agree with you 1000%. Everything you're saying, I agree with. I know that I created a webinar called Powerful Questions, which is essentially the list of questions that I always try to go through now in my outreach. Do you have a resource or a webinar or anything that people can go to see your style? Because I agree with you also that it's good to see different styles, different perspectives, and then for people to say, okay, this fits with my style, with my personal, you know, with my personality. Do you have anything like that that people can go to right now? I know. So before you say that, I also want to say that anyone that's watching this that wants to learn more about Josh, definitely go to his website, Entis, ENTIS.com. And through there, you can link to all of his different resources and all that stuff. You can see where he is in the world. I know that your tour schedule's up there as well. So definitely check that out. Anybody who wants to learn more about AVO, my website's amazingveganoutreach.com. Same thing. I'll have my tour schedule there and all that stuff. But Josh, so if you could recommend someone to check out your questions or your work, where could they go?
So it's funny you said that, because I don't have been traveling, as you know, been traveling by myself. Traveling by yourself is hard to get the content that you want all the time. So I've been focusing the majority of my time and effort on giving in-person workshops, in-person talks. I think you just gain so much value out of being, as you know, as being in person with people there sharing these ideas. You can watch any of my YouTube outreach videos and you'll see the line of questions that I ask. You'll see the level of comfort that I have in there with making it about relationship building. That's just how I learn, is watching people in action doing it. But I will say that in my 15 days of recharge in Playa del Carmen in 2 weeks, I will be taking my full outreach workshop and putting it into, I think I have it mapped out to be 10-minute YouTube videos. And so I will put those on my YouTube channel just in a playlist, because I've never filmed my outreach workshop and put it online, because I want people to come into it. They're live streamed. People are posting them in all their group chapters and this and that. But I want to make it into really nice bite-sized videos so that people can have that information. I also do one-on-one calls with people if anyone has any questions. I also, if you send me a message on social media, it might take me a few days to get to you. But if you're like, hey man, can you send me those list of 10 questions that you ask in every one? I'll send those over to you. Like, I want to be as accessible to people as possible. But the vision is breaking my workshops. I have another workshop too, into these digestible YouTube sort of series, or not folders, playlists. And then also creating 2 little ebooks that you can download for free on my website. That's big goal. Whether or not that happens in the next 2 to 4 months, I don't know. But that's the goal. The YouTube videos for sure will happen in the next 2 to 4 months. So I'll have those up there so that people can see that and really gain my perspective, because I'm sure a lot of people here have either been to your talks or seen your webinars, but it's always good, like you said, to get different people's perspectives, because you and I are going to cross in certain areas, but then we might be so far over here on other tactics. So stay tuned, everyone. They will come.
Yeah. So Josh, your YouTube channel is all your social media just searchable with Joshua Entis?
Yeah. Oh, 100%.
All your Facebook, YouTube, Instagram.
Yeah. Instagram, there's a dot in between my name, but if you just type in Entis, it'll come up. Yeah. All across the board, Joshua Entis.
Cool. Well, Josh, man, I want to thank you again for taking this time and joining me. And I hope that the conversation was useful. I know that we could probably talk for like 8 hours. We dissect everything, but I think this is nice to get together and you know, just share some positivity with the world. So thanks a lot. I will, for anyone who's on here right now, this webinar is being recorded and it'll be uploaded. It'll definitely be on the Amazing Vegan Outreach YouTube channel. Josh, if you want it, I can send it to you as well. Cool. And besides that, thank you guys for joining. Thank you for the questions that are coming up, and we'll go into a Q&A section now. But for everyone that is watching this on YouTube, thank you for tuning in, and we'll see you on the next one. Cheers.